to get miserable enough to follow directions, I guess. I say a lot of people don't get the gift of desperation.
No.
That's
Gift
it.
Desperation is the greatest gift.
Okay, I'm
Okay.
rolling. I'm rolling. So,
You're rolling?
oh yeah, I've been rolling.
Oh, you've been rolling as we talk about the
Yeah,
program?
sure.
Well,
Oh,
I
you're
want to
such
tell
a
you,
fox.
it's the greatest gift of my life. And I sincerely mean every word that I say to those wonderful fellows in my fellowship that I love so much. And of course, now I'm all excited about Joe, who's got 2 days, and David in the back, who had 7, who had never even been there before. I mean, how great is that? So that's really the sustenance of my life. You know, when Dee Dee or Michelle would say to me, "Don't you want to spend the night and see the children, you know, on Christmas morning?" I would say, "No, I've got to have Christmas morning with the people that make you want to have me come and have Christmas with you, because that's really the truth, you know." So anyway, that's all I can say about the gift of AA. It's certainly not for those who don't understand it. I mean, you can't explain it. You have to be desperate to go into AA. I mean, desperate. So, now,
You mean you don't wake up in the morning and say, when you're a little kid, I want to be an alcoholic one day when I grow up?
no. It's the last thing I think any alcoholic ever wants. Ambition is to get into AA. I don't know a single soul in or out of the program that wishes to get into Alcoholics Anonymous. No, not anybody. You just have to be desperate enough to want to stop drinking. And even sometimes just to know you have to stop, you don't want to stop. And so that's the gift of desperation, which actually means G-O-D. And anyway, have you got a question for me, Suzanne?
Got tons of questions, and we're moving off program for a while.
Yeah, let's get off program.
I wanted to talk to you actually about remembering Mom and Dad when Dad was painting. Do you remember when he started painting?
I do know exactly. He started in 1942 with Cobweb Castle. Cobweb Castle was the first thing he painted. I was 15 years old, and he just had to sit on the porch. He was 43. He had to sit on the porch and look directly. Cobweb Castle was directly in front of our house. And he was fascinated by that architecture and fascinated with the scene of the water behind it. I mean, we had a real view of the ocean in those days. I mean, you look out on these fancy-dancy houses. Not really fancy, very expensive wall-to-wall houses. But when we moved in there, I was 15. And that's when Daddy sat down on the front porch and painted Cobweb Castle. And then what happened to him that winter, he started painting boats, you know, copying them from books so that he could get Mother into doing it together. And they had turned their master bedroom, which had a fireplace, into a den because I had started dating Bob Wilkinson. And so they knew that they wanted their privacy, and they didn't want me down in the basement with Robert Wilkinson because they had seen Jimmy Lewis and I go down there together and come back up with a little smeared lipstick and all of that. So they turned their master bedroom and went into what I call the nursery. So on the second floor of the house you never lived in, the house that I wept over to leave at 18, there were 4 bedrooms, and the master bedroom had the fireplace, and it faced like this room with a window here and a lovely window seat up here. And I remember as a child sitting there looking at Mother nursing the babies. In that beautiful sunlight, she'd be sitting there. She was a true Madonna with this babies that she was nursing. And I'm sitting there. It was a time when she was sitting still and I could talk to her. I remember that as a very good time because even when when Di was born, which that was a very bad time because that was the year that Josie was burnt. And but before that, like when I was 5, and she was nursing Leonid or Josie, I'd be sitting there. That was my time with my mother when she was nursing the baby. So it's no wonder I prayed for these babies. Every night I'd get my father, who always said prayers with me. I know it's more normal for the mother to pray with the child, but I guess mother was worn out at the end of the day, and it was daddy's job. And he sat there, knelt by the bed with me, and I did everything to keep him going. I prayed for not only the milkman, the postman, every aunt and uncle, cousins, brothers, sisters, and then I would get to the end, and I would always say, and please God, give us another baby. And I mean, we had a house full of babies. I was like 6 years old, and there were 4 younger than me. And Daddy would say, don't you think we have enough babies, Marion? This is kind of the way my prayers would end, and I'd say, well, no, because they make Mommy so happy. But as I'm telling you the story, right now, I am knowing why I loved Mother with babies, because I got to be there on the window seat, and I got her full attention. Because certainly the baby wasn't getting anything but milk. I was getting Mother's eyes looking at me as I talked to her. And it's funny that never came up until right now, that memory of sitting there on the window seat with my mother. And I have many wonderful memories of Mother and Taunty as a child. Taunty was my mother's, aunt. Her Taunty, we called her that because she loved French. And apparently she was the exact opposite of my mother. And I guess maybe...
your mother or your grandmother? Or our grandmother?
Well, my grandmother, my mother's mother.
Yeah, that's what.
And Mother had a difficult relationship with her. She had a very strong personality, apparently. And she liked to go into the city. And all my life, I thought, Grandma was a party girl, because the way Mother talked about her, that's the way it sounded. Like she loved hats and feathers and velvets and, and all of that. She loved clothes, and she'd take off in the morning, and she left unmade beds and dirty dishes, and help probably was hard to get for her. And so Mother would have to come home after school, and she would do that, I guess, and she resented it. So that's why she never let me do any housework. Never let me do a strip of housework, except Wednesday nights when they had their night and Mary went out. Mary fixed a dinner. It was heated up by Mother. And afterwards, Peggy and I did the dishes. I just remember it as a song fest. I don't know what Peggy remembers, but all I remember about doing the dishes was how much fun it was to sing with Peggy.
I love doing the dishes.
I love doing the dishes and washing them, and I love it up in New Hampshire. We have a sink about this big, and it's a happy memory of childhood with Aunt Peggy. Because I was always trying to be with her, and she was always trying to get away from me. I mean, she thought I was the biggest pest in the world, and she used to run up to Mary Montgomery and say, "Take her away from me, get her away from me." And Mary would say, "Well, just kick her," like that. She said, "Marion, why don't you leave Peggy alone?" I'd say, "But I want to play with her. I want her to like me." Now, we slept in the same room and everything, but she didn't want to play with me. And hardly anybody wanted to play with me. I must have been pretty obnoxious. The only thing that I remember about the neighborhood was that I went to dancing class, and they had a recital every year, and I had all these costumes, and naturally I outgrew them. So I would put on these big productions with Harry Rigby, who did become a producer. You've heard about Harry Rigby, right?
Well, you can tell me more about
Well,
Harry Rigby.
Harry Rigby lived down the street, and he was a big sissy. Everybody called him Sissy, Sissy, Sissy. His father even hired a football player from Penn for the whole summer to try and make him a man. Can you imagine that? But Harry liked to sing and dance. So when Harry heard about my productions, even though we lived way down on Hillside Road, he came up and said, "Can I help you?" I'm like about 9 or 10 or 11, something like that. So Harry and I would produce these backyard things. And there was 2 huge trees. I'd love to go see if they're still there. And I would make everybody hide behind these tree trunks until the music for them was to come on and dance. And I made everybody in the neighborhood pay a quarter, the parents. Now, I know that doesn't sound like a lot of money, but a quarter back in the 30s probably was worth like $5 today, right? Something like that. But anyway, the neighbors had to come because their children were in it. And they were wearing my costumes. And my mother used to tell the story about how horrible it was that I'd put on these productions, usually when she was getting rooms painted and there was painters in the house, and all these kids were running through the house, putting on their costumes and all of that. But so I was into theater. Never you mind, I was into theater. I was a producer. I produced those things where they leapt out from tea. You were never lovelier. And I just, when I think of it, I have to laugh. I have to laugh. What torture my poor mother put up with. But anyway, I think later in life, she did have a few laughs over that, right? Did she tell you any?
Oh, she had a lot of laughs. But
Huh?
I particularly love it when you tell the story about how you used to be the queen of the fairies.
Oh,
Wait, let me stop just for a second here.
There's no note.
oh, Mr. Vanneman. Mr. Vanneman was up to his tricks. He said, well, this is, Mrs. Dagit is so busy. She's so busy. And sometimes she forgets. I mean, if you had all those children. So, oh, I'm sorry, of course, Mr. Vanneman. I'll get her down as soon as possible. I'll call Sister Agnes Mary. So down I would come. And I'd look at him and he'd go, I'd give a wink. And he'd say, we're going for your dental appointment. Your mother forgot a note. And off we'd go. We'd get in the car and he'd go, yay, now we can play hooky. I'm going to get a hot fudge sundae. And he'd take me down to Shay's Pharmacy and we'd sit there. And I want to tell you, no amount of love that came out this morning was any greater than the love he had for me. So when he died, when I was 16, just about that age, either before or after, I was really loving kissing Bob Wilkinson and Jimmy, and I was really getting into it, and I could have been in a lot of trouble very fast. But until I got married, Grampy was right there with me. Not like Daddy. Daddy would chase Jimmy Lewis down to 21st Street if he arrived in Avalon. But Grampy would be like my Michelle, who would say, Mom, do you really want to do that? Do you really want that extra piece of cake? You know how Michelle is, so gentle. Do you really want to do that? Well, Grampy, in my mind, whenever I was getting too frisky in the front seat, Grampy, his face would come before me and be like, are you sure you're going to be happy with yourself later? And he kept me safe and on the dotted line. If it weren't for Grampy, because I feared no religion, I certainly feared not my mother and father, no matter how they yelled at me. or no matter what they did to me, I knew they loved me. I mean, they were just overprotective. But Grampy was my buddy, my best buddy. And when you have a Grampy and you have a Taunty and Uncle Marshall, I mean, you've heard Aunt Betty say, we didn't know what to do with her. She would come during the middle of a school day. And we loved to see her, but we didn't know what to do. We didn't know whether to tell her mother or what to call the school. And then we'd all decide, let's just have fun. And that's exactly what we did at Tawny's. I'd play hooky, but Grampy taught me. And then Uncle Offie, the one you didn't know much about, but he knew every bar from here to the end of New Jersey. Uncle Offie lived with this woman for many, many years. And
Is that 10 cents a dance girl? Lil or whatever?
oh, no, I don't know anything about that. I missed that story. But Uncle Offie lived in Upper Darby, and we thought he was a roomer in this woman's house, that he had a room there, and that this woman had a child, Jeannie, who was Hill's age. And we always thought that he was just a roomer there. And it was behind Gimbel's, and I played hooky there. And I mean, I don't know how they ever gave me a diploma. Anyway, I played hooky there, and I'd go, and one day, Mother dropped in on them when she was shopping at Gimbel's. And she opened the door. I was in the kitchen, and she said, "Yoo-hoo!" And Uncle Offie turned pure white. He went, "My gosh, there's Marion." Big Marion, they called her. Big Marion's here. Little Marion, run down into the basement. Run into the basement. So I had to run into the basement, and I could hear Mother having a lovely visit with them. And I could hear Uncle Offie saying, "Well, what did you come to Gimbel's for, Marion?" You know, constantly reminding her that she should go shopping. Oh, so, I mean, between Uncle Offie, Uncle Marshall, Taunty, Betty, Ellie, and poor Reds, who just would walk around and kind of smile while I was there, they were my group of my little fellowship. So you don't blame me for playing hooky, do you? I mean, please, Mother and Daddy were mad at me all the time at that time. And probably with good reason. But never at my boyfriend's. Never. It was Marion who decided, Eric, for my religious thing, that they were not Catholics and I would not marry. Not Mother and Daddy. They never said a word. Never once. They loved Bob Wilkinson. They loved Lee Haller. And they couldn't stand Jimmy Lewis, who was a Catholic. So, I mean, they never interfered. So I never go with the, if anybody, like Peggy says that she couldn't marry Lon Harsey because he wasn't a Catholic. I'm like, you didn't get that from Mother and Daddy. Ever. Ever, ever, ever. Why? I think because of Harold Montgomery. So, you know, there are things that were in the past that Daddy was ashamed of. And I think it was that he led the family into these awful divided fights, you know, within the family. And Mother would hold on to them. Daddy might start them. But Daddy, you know, Daddy would have forgiven and forgotten, like he did when they had that last meeting with Uncle Harry and Charlie, and they divided up the picture and the thing, and Harry went over to Daddy, and Daddy told the story that night, and then he cried. And Mother said, "What are you crying for? Those turncoats." But remember, Daddy said that Harry walked over to him and said, "Were you there when he told the story?" He said, "Albert, I don't have that check, enough money in the bank right now. I'll have to sell some stocks, but we've always trusted each other." And when he said that, Daddy started to cry. Because it was Harry that they went after. You know, and Harry was the sweetest. You know, he really was. And he had enough troubles with Aunt Catherine that he didn't need any more putting down. And so I remember Daddy crying over that. And I remember Mother, she loved the fight. She always blamed Grandma Daggett for loving the fight, but Mom loved the fight too, don't you think? She couldn't let go. You know, that was the one thing about her, as generous and loving as she was, and she certainly was, all of that. She just couldn't. She couldn't let go of a resentment. So that's, you know what I call that? Child of an alcoholic.
That's what I was just going to say.
Were you?
Yep.
Yeah, that's it. But anyway, we were totally blessed. I feel totally blessed with the parents I had. I grew up in a house that looked like a castle and a church. And I thought it was like every other house. But it wasn't. It was a house fit for a princess. And have you ever gone into that house? So you know what I mean. It's like so teeny. You can't believe it, right? The rooms. But such a just a beautiful, artistic, gorgeous house. Did you ever go in it, Eric? Oh, there wasn't a door like this except when you got in the bedroom, the closets. But the hallways were all Gothic arches. And, you know, as much as I was a rebellious kind of defiant, like my own way. I don't think I ever did anything really bad, but, you know, play hooky and, you know, stuff like that. But when I came to New York, it was very upsetting to Daddy, above all, because he was always the overprotective one. And Mom wished me goodbye and said, get a place on Riverside Drive. You know, that's what she said. Until I told them the jail story in September, when they heard the jail story. That was the end. They sent out the troops to take me, put me in the loony bin. And when I look back at it, no wonder they did that. I mean, it was scary what I did. But did you see Enchantment, the movie Enchantment? Oh, you haven't seen it?
No.
Well, it goes from a Disney characters, all the Disney characters, and then what happens, they become real. She comes out of something in the park. And when she's in the park, she's lost her prince. When she's the real person, and she's in her clothes, and she's dancing around, and she's so happy. She loves everybody in the park, and everybody in the park loves her, and they're all dancing around. I totally identified. But you couldn't help but think she was nuts. And everybody in New York then thought I was pretty nuts. And of course, Father Tater called the family and said, I think your daughter needs help. And so anyway, the troops came in and it wasn't too nice. But I just think of Daddy writing that letter in the summer, you got to get out of here. You know, you can't. And I wrote him back, and I'd give anything to have a copy of that letter. Because that's what the last sentence was. Don't worry about me, Daddy. I'm fine. New York needs people like me. And which I meant, knowing that a lot of goodwill and love is what I had to give. And up until then, I had a very bad look at myself, you know. I had felt years I never deserved the love I was given. Never. I never. But anyway, to get back to my last, I'm going to finish right here. This is the end. But I was in New York a couple of years alone up in my little room, and I had a dream. And the dream was, I dream all the time, but I don't remember my dream. But this dream was totally real, and it goes back to the house on Medford Road. And I came down the stairs with my suitcases, and I was standing in the circular hallway, and this is a dream, and I'm standing there with my suitcases, and Daddy is back in the dining room, at the end of the dining room where his chair was, standing behind the chair. This is so clear to me still. And he was standing behind that chair, and I guess that's significant because that's where he taught us, he told us stories, he entertained us. He was the nonstop talker like I'm doing right now. And he would just give us our lessons in life. The 40 was the beginning of life, and work hard and you can do anything, and always believe in yourself. And he really gave us a lot of good talks. Well, anyway, Daddy was standing back by his chair with his arms on it, and he said to me across to the hall, "Are you sure you want to go?" And I said, "Yes, Daddy, I do want to go." He said, "Are you going to be all right?" I said, "Oh, I'm going to be fine." He said, "Well, do you have enough money?" I said, "I'm going to be all right. Don't worry, I have enough." This is in the dream. I have enough money. I didn't have any money then. I have enough money. And he said, "Come here. Come here. I want to tell you something." So I walked across the dining room back to his chair, and he looked in my eyes and he said, "I just want to tell you I love you." And I said, "Daddy, I always knew it." And with that, I had woke up with a feeling of peace like you just can't know. Not forgetting one bit of that dream. I didn't have a penny. I had no money. It was the middle of winter. I was scared to go to Philadelphia because of, the troops thinking I should go to Haverford State Hospital. But after that dream, even though I had no money and went and became a hat check girl and all these dumb things and got fired, I knew it was going to be all right. Deep inside of me, I knew I was going to be all right. And that if I just didn't drink, didn't take a pill, and I went to meetings, I was going to be fine. And you know the story of the end. You have come to my meetings. You have seen how much I have loved them, how much they love me. And I just feel like I'm back in the circle of love. So that's my story. Do you want any more?
Well, that's a great story.
Is that all you need?
Well, that's probably good.
Do you have
I
a
was
question?
going to ask. I was going to ask you one more thing pertaining to art.
Oh, yeah.
Just for curiosity's sake, and that is, do you remember the Christmas cards being made?
Always. Why, do you?
Yeah.
Always.
It was always on Black Friday, the day after Thanksgiving.
Oh, I didn't know that.
That's the part I remember. But I mean, what do you remember about? Did he talk about what?
No.
It was always like a big secret.
No, not that. I think it became a big secret because people lived to get that Christmas card. And we all did too. We wanted to see what he did. And the most marvelous thing about those cards are somehow he captured the essence of every grandchild. Mm-hmm. And I would like very much to find that book somewhere in my possession, but with all of them in it, to get copies to show to my children. So the children will see that my father saw them as they were as children. Because he did get the essence of them, don't you think?
He did. What I especially remember of that period would be that he would talk to Mom, and it would be the week before, I guess it was the day after Thanksgiving. They would talk, and he would say, "Okay, now I need the list, and I need to know what they're interested in." So it was Mother that was feeding him all that information about what the children were up to, and who they were and what their personalities were and everything else. So she was actually...
But that's not what
she
it was.
was
The way he
feeding it to
captured
him.
them running.
Yeah, but she was I mean, it was really a joint effort between the two
Yeah.
of them doing that card. That wasn't a single... It wasn't one person doing
Well,
it.
when
It was definitely
when
the
he
two of
first
them.
started it was alone.
It was alone, right.
Yeah.
But
And
as
he
they
did
progressed...
do it alone. I remember, even as a child, him doing it, but it was kind of last minute. You know, he designed that house on Mother's bed when she had Danny. You didn't know that? Huh?
No.
No. Or maybe it was on mine. I don't know, because I thought it was Danny's, but then I think they won the prize for it in 29, and they moved into it in 30. So maybe when she was pregnant or when I was born, he started the plans for that, because he did go over to France when I was born. He went, a couple of weeks after I was born. And he spent the whole summer there. And then he came home with all these dolls, which I never know where all my doll collection went to. It's all gone from that house. I had all these dolls that I had saved all the years, but I always left them in Mother's house. I never took them away from there because I knew they'd get wrecked. But he'd bring home a doll from every place he went for me. So what I'm saying is, he designed it. It must have been he designed the coat of arms after Danny was born, because it was 3 shields, right? And the fleur-de-lis for Mother and the lion for him. So the house was designed for 3 children. That's the way it was. I had the back room. The boys had the middle room. Oh no, the boys had the back and I had the middle and the special furniture. But it ended up, I don't know where that furniture, somebody has it, I don't know. But no, it ended up the boys were in the middle room and Peg and I were in the back room. And that front room next to theirs, which they'd made their bedroom event, that was the nursery. And I can still hear Leonid and Diane banging their heads on their cribs. Banging them over and over and over. That's how they rocked themselves, like this, and banged their heads. It's a wonder they had any brains left, because they would really rock like this. Rock themselves to sleep and wake up in the middle of the night, they'd be banging their head. Yeah, when they were little. I remember that very, very well. I used to, as a child, worry about that, about those two.
Diane had her leg banging, I think, well into marriage.
Oh, real leg banging, not head banging.
Her leg would go thump, thump, thump.
Well, see, her head was what she did when she was little.
But I remember going to sleep with her and her leg would be doing that.
Oh, really?
Uh-huh. Yeah, so she thumped for quite a while. I wonder if she still thumps. We'll have to ask her.
I wonder, yeah. Yeah.
She's still a thumper.
Well, I'm so excited she's into art again. Oh,
Isn't
my
it
God.
heaven?
Do you know she called me and we had like a big conversation. I'm sitting up on the roof watching the sunset. I think Wednesday night. She told me she was back into art.
I know, she's loving it.
Hmm?
She's really happy.
Well, she's a miracle always to me anyway. She really is. She's something else.
You remember, where did Mom and Dad live when they were first married? Do you remember?
Yes, they lived in that little house in Overbrook. Haven't you ever seen that house where I was born? That's where I was born.
What's the address?
It's like, gosh, Michelle and I have driven by it, and I'll remember the name sometimes.
Oh, when you
It begins with an M, like Minden. Yeah, I can't think of it.
It'll come to you. And they lived there until...
And Grandma Vanneman was crushed that they bought this row house. She thought that was such a step down. She was just so brokenhearted that they bought this little row house. And, Daddy always talked about all the money he lost on that. Because the renters, he couldn't sell it and the renters didn't pay rent, and it ended up being a big problem, but they didn't sell it before they moved into Medford Road. They moved into Medford Road with bucks. And then it all stopped.
Do you remember Grandmother Vanneman?
Who?
You never met Grandmother
Never
Vanneman?
met. I did, apparently. Mother, took me over there, but I don't remember her at all. Not at all.
How old were you when she passed away?
I don't know. I think like a year, 2 years.
Little. Really little.
Not old enough. I know that I always felt that Mom had a bad relationship with her, because when she was angry with me, she'd always say, "You're just like my mother," And then when she was in a good mood with me and she was laughing, she would say, "Oh my God, that's just like my mother." You know what I mean? She went both ways, so I knew it was. But Uncle Hill said Grandma worked so hard. It turned out she wasn't just going into Wanamaker's tea room. She was keeping the Vanneman books, T.J. Vanneman, T.H. Vanneman's books. She was the bookkeeper.
Our grandmother was the bookkeeper
Mm-hmm.
for great-grandfather's business.
For my grandfather's business, T.H. Vanneman, who was
for her
side by
husband.
side.
For her husband's business.
No, for her father-in-law's business.
That's what I just said. Great-grandfather.
No,
She was the grandmother.
my mother's mother worked for her father-in-law.
Who
and
would
the-
have been our great-grandfather.
Yeah, and the three guys, Marshall, Theo, and Paul, were playboys. Uncle Walter was the doctor. He was the serious one who had Mary and Bill. And he died young. So the other three boys, who were hooky players, big hooky players, with, who was the little girl? Drew Barrymore, with the Barrymores. They went to the same school, boarding school, with the Barrymore brothers. So, you know that they went to a nice school. And they had a nice life. And they played a lot of golf and started country clubs. They started the Kimwood Club and I think White Marsh. So, you know White Marsh very well, right, Eric? Yeah.
Now, they would have been great-grandparent. Great-grandfather and his brothers.
Yeah.
All right, now grandfather was the one that you were describing before that took you on the hooky adventures.
Yeah, he was my grandfather, mother's father.
Right, right.
And Daddy did not like him.
He thought he was a ne'er-do-well.
Yes.
Right? Love
And
that word.
insulted him in front of us. It was terrible. Terrible how he insulted him in front of us. Mother and Daddy were both very immature emotionally. You know that. And Daddy was jealous of Mother's love and affection to anybody but himself. And Mother was exactly the same way. They both were insanely jealous. Some of their fights were just horrendous. I mean, and they come home from a party and some woman had flirted madly with Daddy and Mother'd be throwing things at him. I can remember Grandma Dagit going, oh, here they go again, you know. And according to Aunt Ellie Vanneman and Aunt Ricky, they said when Daddy and Mother, who went together for years, they said to Grandma Vanneman, don't let them get married. They're going to kill each other. You know? So that fighting went on till that last week before Mother died, and I was in Florida. That was the most horrendous fight. I was shaking on the back in the lanai. I've told you that story a lot of times. No? You didn't hear that story about Mother and Daddy? Same thing that she always said, I've had it, I'm leaving you for good. I've had it. I've had enough of you. Well, anyway, I was in the lanai back there, leaving them have peace, and all of a sudden Daddy's going, Marion, come here. And the nurse, who had a little white Amish cap on, who was sitting across the room, was sitting there. What do you want, Mr. Daggett? I don't want you. I want Marion. And he kept calling, and I didn't answer. And Mother came in, and she said, what do you want, Albert? What do you want? And he said, I want the pea pot. I hope you put this out. I want the pea pot. And she said, well, we have a nurse here, Miss So-and-so, to take care of that. I don't want that fat lady to come near me. I want young Marion to come in here. And I'm out on the porch like this, I don't want to do it, And Mother said, well, that's just too bad. And she said, and I've had it. How dare you talk to that lovely nurse like that? I've had it, and this is the last. I'm leaving you. I can't take another minute. I'm going. And with that, she takes her little cane. She hobbles out, and here's Daddy. She's passing him, and his eyes are following her like this as she goes to the thing, and he goes, oh, come on, Marion. Let's stick it out to the end. We've been together a long time. Don't you think we could stick it out? I can't take another minute of this. Don't even talk to me. And she just spiels out at him like you wouldn't believe. And he's sitting there just crumbling into nothing in his chair, like this, sitting there. And I think he forgot about the bathroom, but he was sitting there just like this. And Mother slammed the door of that back suite, She went back there. Are you sure I never told you this story? Oh my God. I can't believe it because I'm shaking. I was shaking like I did my whole life when they'd have a fight. You know how you felt so powerless and scared? And anyway, I stayed out there and I just didn't know what to do. And that sweet Amish nurse is sitting there quietly. And Daddy says, in the quietest voice I've ever heard, Miss So-and-so, I was so out of order. I don't know why I ever said that to you. I am so sorry. I am so sorry I talked to you like that. Now he's whispering. Mother never could have heard him. Never. Not on your word could she have heard. I heard it because I was right behind him. I am so sorry. And this dear lady goes, Mr. D, you're in so much pain and so uncomfortable. I understand. When you're in pain, you often talk like that. I'm used to that. Don't apologize. And Daddy said, oh, thank you so much. You're so nice like that.